America 250 is being celebrated all over the place, and we feel that the most important way to examine where we are, who we are, is to start in our own backyard. And local politics are of the essence now, given the primaries coming up, and we have managed to assemble 3 women who want to lead us out of this morass we're in, and running for different offices. And let me introduce you one by one. All the way at the end is Debbie Spielberg. She's running for Democratic Montgomery County. She's a Democrat for Montgomery County Council. That's Montgomery County, Maryland, in District 1. Tazeen Ahmad is a Democrat running for state delegate, and that's District 16. And then Alexis Goldstein is a Democrat running for the US Congress and in District 6. So that's pretty formidable. I would say that, are you all first-time runners? I think this is quite something. 3 women, 3 Democrats, 3 first-time runners. I'd like you to take a microphone behind you, and whoever gets it first gets to talk. Tazeen, tell us why in the heck it's on, and just tell us why in the heck you want to do this.
You know, my first introduction, my first realization I needed to get into politics was when Donald Trump got elected the first time. I just realized at that moment that this is insane and we need to be really engaged. It's not okay for us to just assume that things are going to be okay. So I think that was the sort of the starting point for me in politics, even though, you know, I've always been involved and engaged. I did political science in undergrad, so politics has always been something that I've been interested in. But
many people study politics and don't feel the need to run for office. So tell us why. What's driving it? I mean, aside from Donald Trump's presence.
Yeah, no, obviously that is one main thing. The other thing is I just feel like we need more people with diverse backgrounds. I've spent 25 years running businesses. I've been in business, I have a business and financial background. We need people that are going to make tough decisions. I mean, we're facing a budget deficit, so there's so many challenges we're facing, and I think it's really important that we get people who are able to help navigate us through that. The other thing that I feel like I do well, and I've spent many years working in the nonprofit sector, but I'm really good at building coalitions, and really I started a nonprofit with my daughter in 2019. During the course of those few years, I mean, the start of COVID happened right after we started. But within that 1 year, we were able to build something, not just by ourselves, but by bringing other people into it and having conversations. And we distributed 1 million pounds of food in that first year of COVID.
So you're an active soul.
I'm an active soul. When I see something that needs to be done, I put myself forward, and service.
Pass that mic. Why the heck? Truth be told, we first knew of each other. You can tell the story.
When Christine Blasey Ford went before the Senate to testify against Brett Kavanaugh's nomination, both Amy and I and others in this room are alumni of the Holton Arms High School, and so there was a Holton Arms alumni letter in support of her as a fellow alum, and we did a lot of different things. I did some media. We spoke with Senator Kristen Gillibrand and Senator Mays Hirono about the letter and in support of her. And then there were actually some current students who were even in the room the day of his nomination hearing. But
I raised this because I think it gave you a taste for activism. Tell us.
I mean, I grew up in Maryland. My first activism was something called Montgomery County Student Environmental Activists, and one of our signature things was opposing the ICC, which we did not win. But I've always been someone that's, I think it's important to fight a fight, even if you think it's almost impossible to win. And I've been really angry at the sort of what I've seen as the lack of some of our elected officials trying to fight fights, because it seems impossible. We're not in the majority, we can't do anything. And I was really inspired by Senator Chris Van Hollen when he went to El Salvador and was advocating for his constituent Kilmar Abrigo Garcia, and I think a lot of people were skeptical, including myself, that he could do anything, and he
This
actually
is
got him out
actually
of there.
a very important and remarkable highlight. If you could just tell us a bit more about that, the Van Hollen move, because Maryland has, I think it's the second largest home to Salvadorans outside of El Salvador. And in Maryland, Virginia, you know, Maryland, Virginia, we have an enormous population here. And
So yeah, there's been huge ICE activity, especially in Montgomery County, especially in sort of northern Montgomery County. There's a big El Salvadorian population. There are a lot of other Hispanic and Latino populations. And there's, just to shout them out, there's a collective called the Montgomery County Immigrant Rights Collective, which is now expanded throughout all of Maryland. But they've been doing a lot of GoFundMes, because what's been happening is people's father, their mother, their caretaker have been being snatched by ICE, and then a senior in high school is suddenly the primary breadwinner. Or, you know, the father was taken and the mother's scared of leaving the house. And so Kilmar Abrigo Garcia was someone who was caught up in a sort of false charge of being a part of a very particular gang and shipped to CCOT, which is like this maximum security torture prison in El Salvador. And he wasn't even supposed to be there, let alone a member of the gang that they alleged. And so Senator Van Hollen really early went there, and I think a lot of people were like, what is this gonna do, you know?
exactly.
And he managed to get him out.
Pass that mic. Debbie, have at it.
So I've also been involved in public policy
For a long time.
a long time. In the 90s, I was legislative director for Congressman John Lewis and worked for him for more than 7 years. And so, you know, I was raised with this sense of you gotta fight against injustice and for fairness. My mother was a refugee from Nazi Germany. She got out on the Kinder transport. And so, you know, there was a real sense of we all have an obligation to stand up. They had friends who helped get them out of Germany, who helped get them to England and then on to the United States, and kind of the power of, you know, there's an old Jewish saying that it is not ours to solve the problem, but neither can you desist from trying. And so I was very much raised with all of that. But I've worked, and then I like to joke that I worked my way down to local politics and was involved in local campaigns along the way. And for the last 17 years, I've worked at the council and for the county executive as a special assistant. I actually didn't really think I'd ever run for office, but in the last few years, I've been very frustrated where I've worked with a lot of communities around District 1 and elsewhere who really haven't felt heard. They've raised really important issues and engagement on local issues, and you would think that at the local level it would be easiest to get your voice heard, and it hasn't been. And it's often people get demonized and name called rather than thank you for trying to engage in your community and to make it a better place. And it's not all about, I mean, I think we can all agree that the Trump administration is a terrible thing and doing terrible damage both here and elsewhere, and that there are things we can do at the local level that can make a difference, and that's very important, and we should. But there are other things that are kind of day-to-day issues, like, you know, how we do land use and how we make decisions that are not about Trump or not even far from it, but that make people, if you don't, I talk a lot about Little Falls Parkway and decisions that were made there, and what happened is thousands of people were ignored on their issues, and it starts to make people feel cynical about government. If you can't even get local government to engage with you and to really listen, and you know, D1 especially and elsewhere as well is incredibly knowledgeable, incredibly experienced, and folks really want to make this community as good as it's possible. And I just felt I want to get in there and help them do it. I want to be like, I know how to listen, and I know how do we take that and run with it. And so
Okay,
it's been
so
really
there's no
fun.
shortage of energy here, and a little bit of insanity, I would say. Running for office is you gotta have a lot of guts, and it's very impressive. You're really looking in your backyards, and you're seeing that even coming from all the way up national level, congressional, dealing with very, very, very big across the country issues, you are now back local, because local's where it's at. So if we're not solid locally, where are we as a community, where are we as a country? What are the 3 things that you, and I'm not gonna pressure you, whoever wants to do it first, what are the 3 things that you'd like to see change in your district, in your zone? And you have to pass. You take a pass.
Okay.
And then you come back to it.
Happy to do that.
I would say that, so I'm trying to run to represent the 6 congressional districts, so northern Montgomery County all the way up to Pennsylvania, all the way west to West Virginia. I would say the number 1 issue is data centers, AI data centers specifically, not the data centers that are out in Leesburg and are racks and racks of servers, but these new data centers that are just full of these graphics cards that are running large language models to generate output for AI. People do not want them in the 6th district. They don't want them in Adamstown where they are already there.
Why?
They smell, they are loud, and they raise people's electricity rates, and they don't generate jobs. There's essentially no benefit to the local community, nothing but downsides, and people are so stridently opposed, in fact. So the incumbent in the district is April McLean Delaney. She ran in the 2024 Democratic primary. She got 24,000 votes across all 5 counties. In Frederick County alone, there was a referendum to roll back the local government's approval of data center, and 22,000 people signed a petition to roll it back, essentially as many people as voted in the Democratic primary in 2024. So that would, I'd say, is easily the number 1 issue. I have a computer science background. I used to work on Wall Street. Everything I do is data driven. I think we should ban AI data centers. All of the financial engineering that is involved in data center construction right now reminds me of what I saw in 2008. I was at Morgan Stanley, Merrill Lynch, and Deutsche Bank before, during, and after the financial crisis. There's some of the same players. Magnetar is a hedge fund that was very involved in collateralized debt obligations. Yes. They are loaning to CoreWeave, which is one of the only publicly traded tech companies, so we can look at their S1. Anyway, I could ramble about that all day, but I would say that's number 1 issue. Number 2 issue is a DHS warehouse that they purchased in Washington County, where they're trying to build essentially a concentration camp. There's 3 toilets, and they want to detain at least 1,500 people there. There's not enough water. There's certainly not enough potable water. And it's been interesting because that's a sort of...
Why Cumberland? Why did they choose that?
Oh, not Cumberland.
Cumberland County.
It's Washington County.
Washington County, excuse me.
I think there's already a prison there. Often people build detention centers in places where there are already detention centers. It's currently a red county. The Board of County Commissioners are all Republicans. Those would be my 2 guesses. But it's I think people have been surprised by the opposition. Even though it's a purple, maybe even red, but more purple district, people are very angry. And I would say the 3rd thing is the same thing everywhere, right? Is cost of living and prices and gas and fertilizer, because there's a lot of farms out there. But I talked to a young man who's in his 20s in Cumberland, and he has an $800 a month car payment, and he was like, I was born poor, and I will be poor for the rest of my life unless the minimum wage goes up, because I had 2 car accidents, which did not impact my license, which did not put any points on them or hurt anyone, but I'm never gonna get out from under this $800 a month car payment unless the minimum wage goes up. And that was his number 1 issue, but I think we hear that all across the district.
It's staggering what stops people in life. It's really staggering, and how easily we could avert one crisis after another for individuals. I just want to make 1 comment for folks and viewers who may not appreciate this, that the impact on Maryland on inflation and fertilizer costs, et cetera, is substantial, because Maryland is a very diverse state. We got a lot of urban, we got a lot of rural, we got a lot of coastal, we got a lot happening. I'm not gonna pressure you, who's next?
So first of all, I think economic growth in our county, in our state, is probably for me the most important, and that's something that I've been talking about from day 1. We need economic growth, and we need to figure out how we are supporting our businesses, the small businesses that are here. How are we supporting, making sure we bring other businesses in, because you can't do any of the things that we want to do in terms of the social programs, in terms of environmental protections, if we're not building our economy and growing our economy. So for me, that is a priority number 1. In addition to that, education is crucial. I mean, a lot of people come to this county because of our education systems, our public school systems, and that's why they stay. And
are you sensing any impact of the federal slashing of education?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think even within our economy, we're seeing that, right? We lost 31,000 federal jobs in Maryland. that's had a huge impact. So we've got to figure out how to get those people back to work and make sure that we are, so it's, economically that's a big factor. In education, again, that's also a big factor because funds have been slashed. But I think, so we have to really think outside the box and figure out how are we protecting our schools and making sure that we are spending on the right things and how asking for accountability in our school
And
system.
let me just intervene here and ask you all to address this at some point. We have an inordinate number of federal workers, and I know you can't, except for you, madam.
Congress.
But we have to pick up the slack when the jobs go away and the services also go away, so.
Yeah, and I think that's part of it, right? Making sure that we have programs that are trying to redirect those workers to be able to do other tasks. I think there was a program in Maryland to try and get some of these federal workers to go into the teaching, and there was a lot of push for that and making sure that we are giving them the resources and the ability to fast track that.
To mitigate the shortage of teachers.
Yeah, so I think those things work hand in hand, and I think we've got to continue to think of other ways that we can do that. So education is a big piece of it. I think the third one, I think all of us are going to say affordability. I talk to people all the time. People's electric bills are out of control. It's insane that you're paying an electric bill that's similar to people's mortgages. It's gotten really bad. So I think we've got to look at making.
You hear that? Pepco?
Yeah.
Right there? Okay. No,
But
it is bad.
It is bad,
Really bad.
and I, data centers are playing into that to some degree not because of data centers in Maryland, but interestingly, it's data centers in Virginia that are spiking our bills because we are paying.
Pepco is revisiting some of this, and I don't know if any or either, all of you are aware of this, but they are really examining rates now.
Yeah, and I
They have
think,
to.
and I think
And
that's
there's community
pressure from
solar.
the.
Say it again.
There's community solar as well.
Oh,
Yeah.
we'll get you later.
Yeah, and you're sort of making sure that we are creating more green energy, putting more investment into, clean energy. But that's a big piece of it, that we're on this grid with PJM where we're sharing that cost and we're just paying for all of their data centers. So affordability is something we need to look at. We need to figure out how do we make sure that the cost of housing is people can't afford to, people are paying more than 1/3 of their income coming in on a lot of times the rentals. So I think we have to look at the full picture and figure out, how do we help people get through this the way it is
All
right
right, Debbie.
I have lots of time to think about it, right? So I think I would structure it a little differently. I think about, I really would like to see us be able to plan for the future with the people who live here now. And so it really gives us a better sense of we're a part of this community, and it touches on some of these issues that I am very concerned about, slogans and the lack of transparency. There's this whole conversation about there's truly an affordability crisis, but it's getting co-opted as we got to build more housing, and therefore everything else can go. Land use management, stormwater, tree preservation, traffic management, school capacity, all of it can get pushed to the side in this kind of urgency that's really almost false, and it's not addressing the true issue, which is an affordability issue, and the affordability issues on both sides. And so I think part of that is how do you plan thoughtfully and be really honest and transparent? What are our goals? What are we doing to get there? When we have meetings and the community is involved, too often it's counted how many meetings we had. The planning board gets criticized and then they run a list of meetings they had. Who cares how many meetings you had? The question is, what did you get from the meeting? What changed or didn't change as a result of that? So that's one. I think there's a picture and I think you get a better product at the end if you work with the community and you really are clear on what our goals are and what works and doesn't work. And I won't talk about the 20-year tax break that's going to take down a beautiful building on Wisconsin because it's providing all of the wrong incentives. And then the next is, tied to that is the future is creating good jobs and how we think about what are truly good jobs. And again, building a bunch of multifamily residential is not a substitute for economic development, and too often that's been put that way. We have tremendous resources in this county. We have the life sciences, we have an incredible talent pipeline. We need to support our schools, it's all tied together. We have incredible neighborhoods, people move here for our schools. There are things we should keep doing on our jobs, both in the big with the life sciences. Samsung Biologic just opened their first manufacturing facility in the United States here, and they came here partially for the diversity and who this county is. We have incubators that have grown some really incredible businesses. And then we have some reforms we need to do with smaller businesses. How do we support them to start here, stay here, and want to grow here? So there's definitely room for improvement, but we have a lot of potential. And just on the federal workers, we have, the county has done some of that work about how do you provide a bridge. I don't think we can fill in the whole gap, but there are things we can do in addition to the Fed to Ed. I love that slogan, but also these are incredibly talented people who can fill in some of the other gaps around there. The third thing, I'm endorsed by Sierra Club. I'm a longtime environmentalist. You know, when I was raised by parents who were the Depression era, so they didn't call themselves environmentalists. They were just, it was common sense, right? But we've lost some of that. So I would love to see more attention given to the environment in a lot of ways, from data centers, all the issues around data centers. And
Let's talk about that a bit, because we didn't touch on the environmental aspect, and the water and the degradation.
So there's one site in Montgomery County, some people call it a unicorn site. It's the site of the old coal plant up in Dickerson. And so it's
that's where we used to jump in the park.
Oh.
On the ropes, yeah.
So it's industrially zoned. You know, at local level, I love talking about that. My mother was on the zoning appeals board when I was a teenager, and I could not have thought of anything more boring at the time. And now I love it. I love zoning, and I think zoning really is about our future. And it really, at the local level, that's what so much of where decisions are made. So it is industrially zoned. In some ways, it might be appropriate, but we should never negotiate from a position of weakness. I believe that about the Democratic Party too, by the way. But in this, if a data center comes there, we need very strict environmental standards that cover everything from the water. You cannot put water back in that's warmer than it came out. Perhaps you can't use it at all. That the noise, the setbacks, the settings, all of those things are very important. But also the backup energy and the generation. It needs to be clean energy only, not just clean energy, but new clean energy, and not new clean energy where solar panels are put in our ag reserve, which should be for agriculture, not for solar farms, but in places where we really should have clean energy that's very expensive. So like parking lots and on top of roofs. I've asked, why aren't we doing more of that? It's very expensive. Well, you've got a big company that wants to come in and put this in there, then we can negotiate that. This is the price, and we don't have to have them. So, and I also believe the role of government is you put in the regulations and the private sector will figure out how to work to it. We're not here just to accommodate anything anyone wants, but we can work with folks to figure out, these are the regulations, these are the rules we need. We need the requirements and the incentives to get us what we need to do, which ties to the other part about economic development and environmental economic development. We're really close to Bethesda Green right here. They're doing some very interesting work on incubators in the environmental world, and I think it's really important, some of what we can do with them. I love trash. I spend a lot of time thinking about trash and what we do with our trash and our recycling. Love Oscar the Grouch. Yes, and I love trash song. Yeah, I play it sometimes for my grandnephew because he likes it too. We really need to basically monetize our values. There's a way we can do more with trash rather than burning it, and to really, we have companies that are interested in doing it, and we've got to make it, we've got to provide the right incentives for them to come here. And
hugely important, these environmental issues. We address them with frequency at the gallery, and we'd love to have you back and talk about that. One very important issue that I haven't heard tonight is mental health, which is surging. Mental health issues are surging. Locally, I know, nationally, of course. Can anyone address what we see on the streets? What I went to the Bethesda. I was invited to speak to the Montgomery County Chamber. Fabulous group of people, a lot of hospital folks. And I was talking about art and economic development, but really I wanted to talk about so many folks on our streets, youngins mostly, are really in bad shape. And mostly having to do with mental health issues. So, I'm Debbie Downer here, just to throw that out, but I want
I'm not Debbie Downer.
who wants to tackle that?
Yeah,
So maybe I have a slightly hopeful spin on this. So there's a lot of, so I think mental health is a broad category. I should just confess that my father was a psychiatrist, so obviously I have a lot of opinions about this, and it was real dinner table conversation growing up. But I think part of what you're talking about is the opioid crisis, which has hit Washington County and the 6th District particularly hard. And in Frederick County, the health department has partnered with the library, and there is a 20-minute online training that anyone can take for free. You can take it virtually, you can take it at the library, and then they do Narcan distribution at these lockers in the library that are unlocked, no questions asked. So you take the online test to recognize an overdose, you go to the library, you pick up a box of Narcan, and then you're prepared. The other thing is, this is a similar situation in Washington County. It's a little bit less sleek. They're like vending machines, but there's not just Narcan, there's a few other things that people can pick up. And I think the library health department partnership has worked really well, and I'd love to see it replicated other places. The other thing is, so I'm a fired federal worker. I used to work at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. I filmed Doge when they showed up after putting USAID into the wood chipper, and I said, what's your name, and do you have the right credentials, and have you actually taken our training to handle our sensitive data? And they said, we're calling security on you. And they put me on admin leave, and a year later I'm really the only one they've successfully fired. They keep firing and unfiring the Consumer Financial Protection people. Whoa, folks, but a lawsuit has kept it alive. But Russell Vogt, the head of OMB and the acting director of the CFPB and a lot of other things, has very explicitly said he wants to traumatize federal workers. And I think, you know, federal workers have been tenacious, but as was already mentioned, 31,000 federal worker jobs lost in Maryland, more than any other state. And that's had an impact too on people's mental health.
39,000.
Oh, 31, I think.
31,000?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that has cropped up among the federal workers who've lost their jobs is, like, there's an organization called Well Fed, and it's someone who is trying to help support the mental health of people who have gone through this experience of losing their job and create resources. I was a part, and I'm still a retired member of my union at the CFPB, and we did a session where we just kind of like spent a few hours talking about what we had been through, because it has been very difficult. So I think this is an issue that requires overinvestment. I think there's a lot of different ways to do it. I would definitely like to see more health department library partnerships on the sort of like front lines of the opioid epidemic and the addiction epidemic. I would say that addiction, it doesn't help to treat addiction with shame. You have to treat addiction with resources. I think that's also true with mental health. But I think we're all sort of contending with this right now. Even people who, you know, were recently in these very well-paid jobs. It's hard. I think we have, our government is attacking all of us in different ways, right? And some people are getting it harder than others, but this is a really hard time to be a person.
Anybody else have that?
So I'm going to approach it a little bit differently. I know that what you're saying is true with all these workers losing jobs, but I think in our schools it's a huge issue. I think that a lot of it needs to be tackled early. And more the social media and what kids are being exposed to at a very early age is creating constant anxiety. My daughter was trained to be a school counselor, and so she saw it firsthand. But these kids are being bullied relentlessly online. I mean, so things that when we were little, if we did something that was off, or it was basically those 4 people that you did it in front of was who saw it, and they could tell someone else. But now something happens, that is like played on, everyone's filming, everyone is like, it's played on social media again and again. So I think that is, in our schools, we have to be much more proactive in how we're approaching mental health.
More resources in the schools?
More resources, and I don't know how many of you are aware, but the recent budget that we just, got from the school in Montgomery County slashed all of our mental health professionals to a degree which I was stunned that was where they decided to make their
And this
cuts.
is Maryland.
In Maryland,
Montgomery
yes.
This is
County.
Maryland, and this is Montgomery County, where we care about these things.
Yeah,
theoretically.
but interestingly, and I don't have the facts in front of me, but we rank really low in how we're dealing with mental health.
Debbie, what do you have? What do you have for us?
So I'll just continue on the school part. I mean, I think this is one of the things you really have to look at. I mean, the council funds the schools. It's about half the operating budget. The school board has oversight over it all. But they just, mental health counselors lost their jobs today, and the work that they did to prevent serious mental health problems are gonna create greater problems for us down the road. And I'm just astonished that there's not more work to talk about. How do we dive more into this and really think about what are we giving up and what are we getting in return? We need early childhood because that makes a huge difference on how someone goes down the road. But if you're not dealing with mental health, kids can't do anything else. The one other thing I want to say about mental health is, on the other end of it is some of our helping people stay housed. And in recent years, the county has done something called SHARP, which is helped people, rather than giving them short-term housing, but trying to find them housing that's over the longer term where they can stay in and really contributes to a better stability. I mean, just think about what happens if you don't know where you're gonna be living the next day or how you're gonna get food. And so there's been a real commitment to kind of the longer term, and we're getting the assault from the federal government. And part of the budget pressures right now is because the county is trying to fill in some of those gaps, and that's not cheap. And I think we also need different, this is where I go back to land use. Let's not, if we're gonna allow a lot of housing and development, we gotta get some stuff in return. And all you have to do is say up front, we want affordable housing, we want a larger percentage of it, we want family size, and they'll make it work. We can work on things. And so I think it's very important to be intentional about what we're trying to solve. There's just the gamut of it, and I don't think we've had time really to look at what happened at the schools today, but in terms, I'm very nervous about what it means for our kids.
It's staggering. Anybody have a question or two, or three? Or should I just keep rolling? I'm gonna keep rolling. Okay, nothing about solar energy over there? Yeah.
Can I just add one thing about
Please
the
do.
mental health? And I think that's another issue where seniors are also experiencing a lot of that. The whole thing with loneliness is just growing exponentially among our senior community. And I think, we've got to figure out ways of creating sort of community in a lot of these places, because that is a big issue in many of our
We
senior
have an
population.
aging population, and we have a surging youth mental health issue. There are some across the country. I've done a lot of reporting on this, and there are high schools and colleges where 50% of the population seeks mental health assistance. Those are the folks who are seeking it, and then there are folks who are in pain who are not seeking it. We have a serious issue.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If I could bring this back to the big tech companies. There's been some interesting litigation recently about intentionally addictive products, and there's been some success in litigation against big tech companies. Like if you think about the endless scroll, like a lot of these problems are coming because we have an industry that both parties cozy up to, both parties seek the donations of, that are both monetizing our data, taking our data, selling it back to us, but also very much trying to keep us on the platform. And when I worked at the CFPB, one of the things I did was I did investigate the big tech companies because it was a financial regulator, it was focused on payment apps, but we were also looking at banking and video games. And I don't know if anyone has a young person in their life who plays Roblox, but Roblox has its own in-game currency. And young people will spend hours and hours on this, and sometimes parents learn about it or grandparents learn about it because they get a credit card bill for $1,000 for Roblox, and they're like, what on earth is this? But they are essentially defying laws that they should be obeying, that the CFPB oversees, because they're like, well, we're a video game, we're not a bank. But a lot of these tech companies do this same play over and over again. It's like, we're not a hotel, we're Airbnb. We're not a taxi cab, we're Uber. We're not, a security that needs to follow the SEC's securities laws. We're crypto, we're the blockchain, we're magic. It's new, it's the future. And all of these laws that we have so thoughtfully put in place, there's this narrative that they don't have to obey them. And I do think that part of that, this is a very particular issue that is not my specialty, but there are places that overlap on my specialties, right? Like the Equal Credit Opportunity Act applies no matter what kind of technology it is. And so I do think some of this mental health thing, like we have to look at the role that big tech is playing in sort of pushing these products on us that are very much designed to keep us on our phone and never leave it. And what are the conditions that we are setting on them as they are coming to us and asking for tax breaks and all of these changes to regulation in order to produce, better economic results, but what are they doing to our kids? So,
Tazeen, this is really interesting. This is a really fresh thing for you. You know politics. You're now in it. What is your biggest hurdle between now and the primaries?
Well, the primaries are only, 20 days away?
5 days.
2 weeks, maybe. So I've been doing this I started a year ago. I know that have not been elected, I've not been in elected office, but I have been immersed in politics for the last few years. I was the president of the Women's Democratic Club for 2 years.
Tell us about that.
So the Women's Democratic Club is the Montgomery County Women's Democratic Club. It's one of the biggest clubs and most active clubs in the state. And
A lot of Democrats.
A lot of Democrats here. But we're very, very involved in advocacy. That's a big piece of what we do in Annapolis. And also, so there's so many bills that we actively engaged in and worked with our legislators to make sure we pass those bills. We also had lots of opportunities to introduce people to speakers they wouldn't have otherwise heard from. Heather Cox Richardson was one of the people I got to come here, and I interviewed her. Should we vote for her for president? She's amazing. So we did that at the National Press Club, but we, a wide range of speakers. We did, sort of candidate forums, and so I have been, even though I haven't been, in elected office, I've been working around politics. So I feel like I've got a good sense.
But in the next 25 days, what's your biggest obstacle? Do you have anything you think you might stumble on and you really just want to get past it? The sad part about elections is the amount of money we have to raise. It really is. It's a ridiculous amount of money that we have to raise in these elections, and it's just built into the whole process. How much money are you talking about? In a state race, a delegate race, which shouldn't be that expensive, especially in our area. It can vary. It depends on the district you're in. But in a district like ours, you might have to raise about $150,000. So which is, if you're talking about a congressional race, it's a drop in the bucket. But also, people aren't willing to give as much to a state delegate race, right? And other delegates. So. Because it's expensive, you send out mailers, you're out on the doors, you're doing all of these things. So I think that is a big hurdle for anyone running for elections. At the county level, they have public financing, which is, I think it's a nice, to have that available. So every time you raise money, you get matched by the county. That's not available in the state. But for me, the next few weeks is just going to be out on the doors, just talking to people. We have a few forums coming up. Just keeping up with the issues. So we're almost there at the end of it. I'm very excited for June 23rd. We've been working at this. It'll be a full year since we started. I'm really excited to see this conclude. Debbie, how about you?
So for me, my biggest, what I'm hearing, I actually had 3 friends from elementary school come in last weekend and knock doors with me. We went to elementary school together in Atlanta. And so it was really fun to be out at the doors with them. And what they said to me and what I hear is that when people get to know me, they wanna vote for me. And so my biggest hurdle right now is how I get out my message and who I am to as many people as possible. So been doing nonstop meet and greets, out at the doors, have other people out at the doors, doing mailings and all of that, but how to convey.
What kind of hours are you keeping?
Oh
Tell
my
us.
gosh.
Give it to us. Are you even able to cook dinner?
Oh no,
No.
I could never have done this if either of my kids were home. So my daughters have popped in for a couple of days here and there, and even that I'm like, oh my God, you know, like I want to spend time with them, but I don't have a minute because
Get on the road, start canvassing.
yeah, and they've been helping. No, it is relentless, and there's never more. But I do tell myself, no one forced me to do it. Although I did have, you know, they always say you have to ask a woman multiple times. So I had some really wonderful volunteers who have really stepped up, but they were like, do it. And so they've really stepped up. But for me, it's how do I get out there enough? How do I connect enough in all the different ways? I'm right now poring over my latest mailer because I did one mailer that I've gotten great feedback from that really sort of told the story and captured a little about who I am. And now I'm like, how do I do that? You know what, like all of that. So how to convey me. And I've been trying to have some fun with it. I did a video that said, I'm Debbie Spielberg. I'm not the Spielberg who makes movies, but I do make policy, and I want to make good policy video. You know?
I saw that one. That was cute. How about you, Alexis?
I am running in the most expensive house race in the entire country. David Trone is a billionaire and he is self-funding. April McLean Delaney is a mega millionaire and she is self-funding. And people
What
are
kind
so
of numbers are we looking at?
to the tune of $10 million of self-funding and $6 million of self-funding.
I think it'll be more than that.
Yeah.
Well, that was the latest filings.
60
Um,
Crazy.
There are a lot of mailers going out and people are sort of sick of them, so I'm in this weird position of, do I add another mailer to the stack? I mean, I'm just very realistically trying to raise about $30,000 more to do one mailer, and we did an ad with the Zoran Mamdani team that did the freezing the rent and the halalflation video, which is out. You can see it on the website, electalexis.org, but we'd like to push it out a little bit. So we're trying to raise a sort of reasonable amount of money to do a little bit of name recognition. That's my biggest challenge, is I'm not just running against one incumbent, I'm essentially running against two. And it's a sort of a wall of money and volunteers, right? Because the 6th congressional district is very spread out. Like, you know, you go from one corner of it to another, it's about a 4-hour drive. So I'm really looking for sort of, I have plenty of surrogates, but I could always have more to help do doors everywhere, especially in Western Maryland, where they often feel very, very ignored. I went to a Western Maryland forum 2 weeks ago, and I was the only House candidate there. And they were very happy that I was there. But it's a big district, so we need a lot of people power too.
What's the most, we have just a few minutes left. Day one, you're in office. Debbie, what are you gonna do?
Day one. I mean, I think the first thing I want to do is start to meet with all the people that I have been talking to and figure out what's the plan. I want to figure out what do I want to accomplish in the first 6 months, in the first year, and during my term. And there are a lot of people I've talked to about a lot of important things, and I don't want to lose track of that. I've been endorsed by a number of unions who really talked about good jobs, and they're just
Who's endorsed you? Give us your list.
So I've been endorsed by former Attorney General Brian Frosch, former State Treasurer Nancy Kopp, County Executive Mark Elrich, Sierra Club, Metropolitan Council of AFL-CIO, AFSCME, CASA in Action, Washington Jewish Week, Montgomery County Muslim Council, Coalition of Asian Pacific Democrats. I'm gonna, the mayor of Glen Echo, the mayor of Somerset, multiple members of the town of Somerset, the chair of Friendship Heights, Village of Friendship Heights, 3 other members of the Village of Friendship Heights, I have several precinct leaders, community leaders around, and I lost, I usually do that.
That's
You're a real
formidable.
slacker.
What's that?
You're a slacker.
So,
That's big.
yeah.
And how long have you been running? I mean, I know you declare, but how long have you been really running?
Really since last summer, I would say. I mean, I filed in August, so, yeah.
Alexis, how are you?
Day one in office, there's a bill I already worked on in 2021 with AOC. It's about something called family offices, which are the personal investment vehicles of billionaires. In the 2010 Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act, we brought some basic reporting to hedge funds and private equity funds. Private equity has $4 trillion in assets. Private family offices have $6 trillion, and we have no idea where that money is and what it's doing. I wrote an op-ed about this in 2021 for the New York Times called "The Invisible Whales That Could Sink the Economy" when Archegos melted down, which in my opinion eventually led to the collapse of Credit Suisse because this one guy, Bill Huang, had the same trade on with every desk on Wall Street and nobody knew. It was one guy propping up the whole market. So that's a bill that's written. AOC is no longer on the House Financial Services Committee. That is my dream job, is to be on the House Financial Services Committee. I have a great relationship with Maxine Waters and her staff and the committee staff. So that would be my priority, and then obviously banning data centers and fighting the DHS warehouse all across the country, but especially in Maryland.
Tazeen?
So I think for me, there's a couple of things. One of the things that I really want to see us tackle is housing. It's an issue that has been, sort of top of mind for a lot of people. When I go and talk to people, we knock on doors, housing comes up again and again. But I want to do it in a way that, we start early and we sort of build together like a coalition and a commission, which includes all of these civic organizations. It includes, electeds, it includes other groups and within the executive as well. So we are actually having a conversation, because I think even last session there was a bill on housing. There was a few bills on housing. But I think the last one, which was the Silver to Starter bill, which got the most pushback, was because they hadn't consulted. They wanted to create more housing. They had not consulted with, the communities, and so that, to me, that would be priority number one.
I hear a lot from the three of you about working with others and coalitions and expecting to team up.
I think that's the way we get things done. I don't think you go to Annapolis or anywhere and say, I'm gonna do this and I'm just gonna do it by myself. You've got to bring the community with you. You've got to bring other electeds with you. You've got to get buy-in. And until you do that, then you don't get anything done. So I think that's a critical piece. You have to have a good plan, but then you've got to bring people with you to be able to get things done.
I'm gonna give you the last word.
I think you have to also think about who you're bringing into part of it. So one of the first things that the next council will face is the Friendship Heights sector plan. And it's going to be the future in the next 20, 30 years in that area. It's incredibly important on so many ways. And part of bringing people together are the people who are going to be affected by it. And they're not an afterthought. So it's very important to work with community, and then to have to work with colleagues as well, and then the others. So it's just to be sure that everyone we're working with in the community as well as colleagues is super important.
And that is why we had this forum tonight for you. We hope you enjoyed it. This was quite an interesting experience.
Well, thank you
for having us.
Thank you.